Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Real PR with me, Fiona Scott. I hope you're having a good day, a good week, a good month. Today, I'm joined by Dane. Now, I met Dane when I did an interview with him for SME Today, which is one of the outlets I write for with my journalist hat on. And I thought this is a fascinating man, and he gives us a sort of a new perspective on PR. So I invited him to come onto the podcast and also onto my YouTube channel. So let's get into it.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Fiona. I'm Dane Whitehurst. So I'm basically the creative director at a company called Burgopak. We essentially design packaging and produce packaging for different brands and products all over the world. I think we've produced something like 400 million or so of our kind of patented systems over the years. Um, Really, there's lots of different focuses with packaging, and I'm sure we'll get into that in a bit more detail. But really, we're kind of about translating brand values and building. I think a lot of people call it a wow factor. This idea of unboxing into that kind of product experience, if you like. So that's a lot of the focus that we have. I myself studied in industrial design, so I got into, designing lighting and furniture and all things like that, and kind of fell into packaging kind of by accident. But I've been here, I think it's 17 years now, and it's a fascinating area. So again, we'll talk much more about it, but hopefully that's a good introduction to me and generally what we do.
I mean, for me, I'm as a very visual person, packaging really matters. And when I've worked with clients where they are looking to promote a product, I often find they don't take the packaging as seriously as they should, or they do it really late in the game.
Hmm.
And the problem that I will have if I'm touting a product to journalists is that the packaging won't be ready. I can't send out free samples with the correct packaging. So, talk to me about, particularly when you've got a product, how packaging is important. Where should it sit in the scheme of priorities?
I mean, to be quite honest, I would say almost right at the top. And I think, part of the reason for that, I think it's put really nicely by Rory Sutherland, who's the VC at Ogilvy. And he says, packaging is often the first place a product becomes a brand. Now, if you think about it, you spend all this time developing a product, you spend all this time and money developing a brand, and the packaging is ultimately the first thing that frames all of that experience for the consumer, whether they're making a decision about whether to buy that thing or not, or when they first receive it and start experiencing that product. And if that lets down, if the packaging lets that part down, that's the first experience, that's the first impression. And I think it's sort of a massive part of the storytelling that goes along with brand. And it's a great sort of platform in which to start telling that story. And I think a lot of the time I sort of say to the people that we work with, obviously, the packaging helps to build lots of things. It builds an impression, and it sets a tone for the ongoing relationship. Firstly, with the product, um, and that can be finite. The product user um, relationship can be anything from a couple of minutes to a couple of years, but it can be finite. But the consumer brand relationship could be forever. It's the decisions we make about whether we keep using that product, whether we become a brand ambassador, whether we buy the next version of the iPhone because we love Apple products. And all of that starts, I believe, in many cases with the packaging itself.
Does that ethos that and belief that you have and that someone like me has, does that inform who you will work with, Dane? What kind of companies you will work with?
I mean, yeah, to some extent. I mean, we have obviously a moral compass around, the certain companies we will and won't work with. But I think it's for us it's really about understanding. I think packaging design generally, when done well, is about understanding a brand. So we actually, we don't create brands, but what we do is translate them. So, and a lot of that is to do with storytelling. So effectively taking the values of that brand and telling that through the things that are written on the packaging, but also, the materials that we're using, like the different colors, the way something might be opened and unboxed, and all of those things should kind of ring true to a particular brand and also a product as well. I think, all of those are critical.
I am, Funny enough, after speaking to you for the first time that we spoke, um, over Christmas, my husband bought us two DNA ancestry kits, and I knew that your company had designed that packaging because we'd spoken about it. So I then went on to experience that. When you think about that, that is bodily fluids being transported via packaging through the post to create an outcome and an upsell from that organization, Ancestry. Um, and it was just a work of genius. It was simply seamless, easy to use. So talk to us if you can, Dane, about that whole project.
Sure. I've actually got one here so I can kind of talk you through the packaging. So it was kind of, the reason we got speaking with Ancestry to begin with because I guess, the whole a large part of what they do is about the service they provide. It's the information and data, and the story that accompanies that. Um, all of those things can be highly emotive, and yet the packaging that they were using was, I guess, like okay, but slightly generic, not particularly interesting or exciting. Um, and so they kind of came to us with a brief to, just create some impact, create some visceral impact at the moment the person opens, build some meaning into to that moment, um, and kind of help to obviously frame the product, and get it from A to B and protect it and all of those things. But also, really think about sustainability as well. So there were lots of different facets. So we created, lots of different concepts, and eventually we got down to this one here, which basically, it starts off as a kind of, a fairly normal carton, and then it has this sort of tab which just says pull to open. And then as you open it, the whole thing kind of telescopes out in a kind of really, really nice way. And then in the top, you basically have the thermoform. This one's open with the product that sits inside, and your kind of unique card here with your number. And then you basically work your way through the unboxing process, to and within that journey, it tells you kind of how to use the kit, and how to send it back. And I should say as well, this sort of doubles up as the return mailer. So once you've finished, you put everything inside, close it up, and then that gets sent back to the lab. So it's sealed across here, and then that's sent back to the lab exactly as is. So it kind of has a multi-use. And I think we use something like 28% less material than the original design. So we sort of ticked all the boxes. And often that's the challenge, I think, with packaging is, you obviously we can design anything, but it has to be not only aesthetically interesting, but it has to hit all the other markers as well. It has to be commercially viable and land at the right price. And it has to be kind of responsible and sustainable as well, particularly in, the world that we live in today. So it's for us, it's always about sort of creating this proposition where it's just a no-brainer. And I think it's one of our kind of core beliefs is that, always all the way through our like DNA as a company, we've kind of tried to create really interesting, different approaches to packaging, um, but also building the idea of responsibility into it as well. And we do believe, with the right approach, that you can innovate responsibly. It's just creating and using design, creating tools and using design in a way to achieve both things with, as little compromise on either side as possible.
Just give us a couple of examples, Dane, of other brands you've worked with that people might recognize.
Okay, so for a long time we did the packaging for Revolut. I think we moved millions and millions of these, and we worked right through their tiers. So the first one was their kind of more base, the kind of base tier, and then we kind of moved right up to their metal cards. and things like that with it, you know, with a different execution. So really, I see if I can hold this up. Really nice
I
kind
can
of
see it.
paper textures and things like that to tell a, you know, different story again about the product inside and about the way that that's tiered. I think Bloomingdale's in the States, this is a very iconic piece of packaging. Obviously, have their small brown bag. So we created an extension of that brand for their kind of gift card itself. So that would be mounted here and kind of housed in retail. So we've done a lot of work with bank cards. Like I say, I think we've worked with something, you know, around 200 kind of different banks. We do a lot of work in the kind of healthcare space as well, and broader kind of wellness area. So we work with Thriver as well, as you know, people like Ancestry. And so, you know, our kind of scope is broad. We've also worked with lots of kind of tech startups to help them launch new products and build, you know, a bit of a narrative around the way that new and perhaps unfamiliar products could be used and kind of engaged with through the packaging. So it's sort of telling that story of the product and the hands of holding the hands of the kind of user as they're working through those sort of stages. This is the Thriver pack. So as you open that up on the inside, there's kind of a step-by-step journey that's accompanied by instructions. So it kind of pairs the information to the bit that you're supposed to go to and sort of breaks the process down into manageable chunks so people get things wrong. That works really well for healthcare. So kind of quite a broad spread. And you know, over the years we've done all the packaging for Motorola, lots and lots of kind of SIM cards, O2, Vodafone, you know, really, really broad spectrum of kind of different customers.
And these packages, so I mean, you've just shown us some of the packaging. You patent some of these designs, don't you? Talk about why
Correct.
you do that. I know it sounds obvious, but why is that important?
Yeah, so we worked for a while as a sort of consultancy, but we found that it's quite hard to scale that kind of business, and uh, it's it, people are maybe slightly resistant to pay for the development of their own packaging, if you like. So, um, right from the beginning of our journey as a company, we've behaved more as a kind of product company, if you like, in that we invest the time up front in the research and development of different, you know, mechanisms and ways of holding things. We've kind of developed like child resistant packaging and things like that. So we spend a lot of time doing the heavy lifting up front, and then we adapt um, those formats, if you like, for specific customers. So we consult on different materials, different print finishes. We kind of help take customers through that journey to make their individual packaging special. Um, and so really it's about, for us as a kind of a more product company, although, you know, packaging happens to be our product, it's about protecting to some extent and that initial investment. We spend a lot of time and money in creating these things, and it's about then being able to use that to leverage that basically and create a commercial advantage so that we're not charging our customers to do that, if
Mm,
you like.
mm. Um, I love that, and I can see the sort of the themes between the different packaging that you're sharing with me and with us all today. One thing I wanted to talk to you about, Dane, because we've mentioned it before, more now with the dawn of social media, particularly visual social media, boxes can become part of the PR, if you like, for a brand. So talk to us what you mean by that.
I mean, it's a really interesting one because obviously, I mean, packaging as an object sort of extend as a touch point through all sorts of different media. Obviously, it holds your product. It can be used in sort of advertising campaigns, and it can also be used by influencers and customers to, as a, you know, kind of to share through social media. And we've seen it a lot, particularly with the work around bank cards. That we do. And so packaging sort of taken on this interesting sort of second life. Um, through kind of social media platforms. And we have customers, literally coming to us asking us to basically create like a sort of social media weapon, marketing weapon that they can kind of take out, and people will, because it's such an interesting unboxing, it creates a sort of theatrical element to, that kind of really underpins like a great unboxing video. Um, and that's become a huge thing. I was going to ask you to do this, but if you Google unboxing video right now, I had a look earlier, and you get there's a you'll get returned 176 million hits on Google. It's phenomenal. It's a huge craze, and um it's like super valuable because, I mean, firstly, like I say, if you're creating a prop to allow this sort of unboxing to unfold, it just works really well and people will share it. But it's a great way to sort of introduce the product itself and build value around the brand, all of which will be echoed by this sort of permission-based sharing campaign on social media. So yeah, I mean, for us, it's been a really interesting kind of growth area for packaging beyond just, seeing it in its physical form.
I think we all do that. Anyone who's on social media, we all do that a little bit to some extent. Because I know if I get something like a hamper or something in a nice packaging or something like that, I will take a picture of it and share. And that's just me as a middle-aged woman in Swindon,
Yeah.
who happens to understand marketing. But you're quite right. I've got a contact who, at one time, was the biggest unboxer, as it were, on TikTok.
Mm,
And he
wow.
has hundreds of packages sent to him. And then he would record in his attic every week, 5 things I'm unboxing today. Sometimes you could tell from the packaging what it was, sometimes it was a complete mystery. So there are brands out there that want to put their product in the hands
Mm.
of influencers on that and encourage them to film themselves discovering that product.
It's the place that people find new products now. And it's I think it's so, for me anyway, it's so much more powerful to have other people talking about how good your product and brand is than you yourself. And if you give people the tools to be able to do that effectively, it's so powerful. That really is the way. It's sort of, social media and influencers have replaced, more traditional kind of advertising. Um, and I think budgets have been moved that way accordingly because the impact that it has on sales is much more significant.
I agree. I think it's part of the new movement in rebalancing of what the media means these days. And we either, as a journalist, there's part of me that thinks that's quite sad. But on the other hand, we either accept the reality of the situation and move with it, or we get left behind.
Yeah, or start a podcast and have a
Yeah. Absolutely. Maybe I'll
and
do unboxing videos. People can,
yeah,
oh,
exactly. Have a YouTube channel and a podcast. I mean,
yeah.
yeah, I think in all of these things, there's always, I think human beings generally are somewhat resistant to change, but I think equally we have to adapt to new landscapes and emerging landscapes and ways of doing things as much as possible, um, or we get left behind. And I think it's it's sort of a survival, in the world of business, isn't it? You adapt and you survive, and I think and hopefully thrive. And I think it's sort of, it's joining that and embracing change and actually seeing a lot of these shifts as opportunities. I think that's always the case with innovation. Um, it should always be seen through the lens of as an opportunity rather than a threat, because I think if you see it as a threat, you tend to run in the other direction. Um, and usually that is the death of brands and products. I think you have to embrace the the change in the way things are moving.
Now, someone who actually creates the packaging, so creates the box, if you like, which is you and the team that you work with, uh, you can be pretty invisible part of the process. So, how do you make yourself and Burgopak visible?
Oh, I mean, first of all, by coming on amazing podcasts like this.
Yeah.
Um, it's, we're kind of fairly happy to work to some extent behind the scenes. I think like I say, we've been around over 20 years. And I think a lot of the work that we do comes in through building really strong relationships with either our customers or other people, other partners within the supply chain. And we sort of become their sort of packaging arm. We've become the experts in this field, and we like to think that we do a pretty good job. And we hold ourselves accountable to do that. I think we've become synonymous with innovative packaging, and just this idea of kind of it's very unlikely that you'll get anything that would look anything like generic or kind of traditional, usual, normal packaging from us. We do things sort of slightly differently, and I think you build those things into your brand by doing them well and continuing to innovate, and surviving. I think longevity is an important factor as well. And I think that kind of creates a strong brand in terms of creating visibility. I think talking about what we're doing, and as much as possible, and marketing, and sort of writing articles, and trying to share good ideas, and I would say as well, um trying to kind of raise the bar in the industry, I think is really important as well. We've spent the last sort of 5 years really spending a lot of time developing strategies for sustainability and developing our own tools, and benchmarking the best materials, like literally visiting mills and paper mills and forests, and understanding how different companies go about managing their forests and forestry and harvesting and things like that. So we work with the very best suppliers, and then other things like um, creating tools to allow people to benchmark their packaging. How much material am I using at the moment? What is that material? Where is it coming from? How efficient is it? And then using it as a sort of proactive tool to design out carbon, if that makes sense. So we can do evaluations. And I think and it's then talking about those things and trying to kind of get the industry to kind of latch on and move forward. That we kind of create a level of visibility.
Yeah, I agree, because it makes you, even if your company's smaller than many bigger companies, it makes you a thought leader if you're willing to speak about these things. So, on that note, give us an idea of some trends that people might see in packaging, say late 2025 through to 2026 and beyond. How do you see the industry going?
I mean, obviously, we've talked about unboxing already. I think creating an impact through that. I think so, I kind of mentioned sustainability. That is becoming a much bigger factor. Firstly, through legislation. There's lots of legislation coming out across Europe and beyond, to really uh, try and create better practices both for manufacturers, consumers, and brand owners around the design, the production, and the kind of end of life of packaging. So I think that's going to have a huge impact. And I think at the moment, sort of sustainability means different things to different customers. It might be about building an aesthetic around that to look like, create something that really looks sustainable and sort of earthy. It might be something that's done really quietly, but there might also be, talking points on the packaging, kind of using signs and symbols and a bit of storytelling around sort of sustainability um, to make to make it really feel like it's a big part of the brand offering, not just the box, but it's an inherent part of the values of the brand itself. So I think that will continue. We are kind of less, I guess, less involved in kind of the print branding, graphics, and kind of visual stuff. So there's obviously lots of trends in that area. But we're very much more focused on the kind of structure. of the packaging itself, I guess. But those are a couple of areas that I think are still super important, and they're really the two areas that we try to build a harmony, within. So an incredible brand experience and a really good sort of sustainability story, genuine sustainability story, and sort of bring those things together in a way that we don't compromise on either side.
Um, Dane, we're coming to the end now, so I want anyone listening or watching this, if they think, that's a company I might be interested in speaking to, but I'd like to speak to that guy, how do they find you? How do they get in touch?
You can reach me through info@burgopak.com. So that is our kind of general email, but it gets distributed. It's picked up by kind of lots of different people within the group, including myself. You can also find us at www.burgopak.com as well, and that will kind of allow you to see all our kind of different products and designs and things like that. And then if that looks kind of interesting, then obviously we'd love to hear from you.
I really hope you've enjoyed Real PR today. Many thanks to Dane. Some really interesting points there. You know how to get hold of him now. If you want to find out more about me, I'm at scottmedia.uk. On Facebook, you can join Fiona Scott's PR tribe. Just mention this podcast and I'll let you in. It's entirely free. I'm also on LinkedIn. See you again soon.